What happens when a same-sex romance that started as a dream descends into public humiliation and heartache? They walked down the aisle, exchanged vows with a kiss in front of hundreds of people, confident that their love would last. But just a few years later, the fairy tale is shattered. Broken promises, shattered hopes, and a shaken faith in love. This story is not just about a broken marriage, but about daring to love openly, enduring judgment, and finding yourself through pain. Edison Fan was born in Nanjing, China, where tradition runs deep and silence often speaks louder than words. As a child, he grew up in an environment where obedience was prized and conformity felt like the safest path. He loved to draw, to dance, to dream, yet even then, he sensed he was different. In China, in the 1980s and 1990s, difference wasn't celebrated. It was feared, judged, and often hidden away. From a young age, Edison carried a quiet truth. He felt drawn to other boys, a flicker of affection he dared not name. At school, he laughed when others laughed. He played when others played. But behind that mask was a secret he believed no one would understand. In textbooks, in the media, in hushed adult conversations, homosexuality was never framed as love. It was spoken of as deviance, something shameful, even a disease. Imagine being a teenager, heart pounding at the sight of someone, only to be told that your feelings were wrong. That was the weight he carried. His family, like many traditional Chinese families, wanted the best for him: success, stability, respect. That path led him to New Zealand to study civil engineering. For his parents, it promised a prestigious, predictable future. For Edison, New Zealand became more than a place of study. It was the backdrop to an awakening. In a society more open than the one he had left, he began to glimpse a world where two men could walk side by side without fear, where love could be expressed openly, even celebrated. In New Zealand, he finally dared to look in the mirror and whisper the words he had long avoided. "I am gay." 3 small words, heavy with consequence. Terror, because he knew what they meant against the gravity of his upbringing. Rejection, judgment, perhaps abandonment. Relief, because for the first time, he was no longer lying to himself. At 22, inspired by Ellen DeGeneres' public courage, he made a bold decision: to come out. It wasn't an easy declaration. Coming out meant standing against decades of silence, centuries of cultural pressure. In many Asian communities, family honor can eclipse individual truth. To say "I am gay" was to reveal himself and risk bringing shame to the family name. These were the scales he weighed: personal freedom against expectation, love against tradition. Yet inside him burned a desire stronger than fear, the longing to be loved in daylight. He dreamed of a relationship not built in shadows, not maintained by excuses or lies. He imagined holding another man's hand without looking over his shoulder, kissing the person he loved without bracing for ridicule. Simple wishes to some, extraordinary in his world. Every great story has a hinge, a moment when the heart chooses between the known and the unknown. For Edison, that moment arrived at 22. By choosing to live openly, he wasn't merely shaping his own future. He was stepping onto a path that would, in time, make him a quiet beacon for countless others across Asia. And courage, he learned, rarely comes without cost. Honesty can be a lonely room. Friends drifted, conversations cooled, certain relatives wouldn't meet his eyes. The world didn't change simply because he spoke the truth. But something within him did. When he stripped away fear, when he stopped pretending, space opened for love to enter, cautiously at first, then with a steadier light. There were small, private milestones: 2 men holding hands on a lamplit street, a cafe where no one stared, a late-night bus ride where he let his head rest back and, just for a moment, breathed. He began to collect these scenes, a mosaic of ordinary freedoms that felt, to him, revolutionary. With every step, the shame he had been taught began to loosen its grip. This first chapter isn't about fame or fashion or marriage. It's about truth, about a young man discovering that authenticity is worth the risk of rejection. That love, even when it begins in whispers, demands to be lived out loud. It's about planting seeds of tenderness, resolve, and hope for a story larger than himself. A story of love, loss, and resilience that would one day speak to a generation. Years later, when he looks back on that mirror in a quiet student flat, the trembling breath, the barely audible words, he understands. The moment he chose himself, he changed the ending. Not the world all at once, not the hearts of others overnight, but the course of his own life. And from that choice, everything else, every bruise, every breakthrough, every tender beginning, would find its way to him, one honest day at a time. Because from the very beginning, Edison Fan has shown himself to be one of the countless young Asians who dare to be true to themselves, dare to embrace the truth instead of being silent. Don't you think so? And as you listen to this story, tell me, where in the world are you watching this video? But every awakening, every act of courage eventually leads to a crossroad where the heart is tested by love. For Edison Fan, that test came in the form of a man named Josh Taylor, the first great love of his life, and the man who would walk with him into the most public chapter of his early adulthood. They met in New Zealand, far from the traditions of Nanjing, in a land where the winds of freedom seemed to whisper possibilities he had never known back home. Josh was kind, open, and warm, the sort of person who carried ease in his laughter and safety in his presence. For Edison, who had spent so many years hiding, Josh represented something radical, the chance to love without a mask. Their relationship blossomed in the glow of honesty. Simple moments, holding hands in a cafe, whispering jokes on a bus, watching the ocean under a cloudy sky, felt extraordinary because they were lived openly. Edison was no longer just dreaming of love. He was living it. For the first time, he experienced what it meant to be truly seen by another person, and to be embraced fully for who he was. As their love deepened, they made a choice that would mark history. Not history on the scale of nations, but the intimate history of two people daring to defy expectations. In 2012, Edison and Josh married in New Zealand, one of the few countries at the time where same-sex marriage was legally recognized. The ceremony was small yet profound. Family, friends, and strangers alike bore witness as Edison and Josh exchanged vows, sealing them with a kiss. For Edison, a man of Chinese heritage, this was no small act. It was a declaration, not only of love but of existence. Imagine the scene. Two men walking down the aisle, hand in hand, hearts racing but faces glowing. In that moment, they weren't statistics. They weren't stereotypes. They were simply two human beings promising to spend their lives together. For Edison, it felt like stepping into a dream that once seemed unreachable. Their marriage became a beacon for many in the LGBTQ+ community, especially in Asia, where same-sex unions were still either stigmatized or outright banned. Pictures of them together, smiling on vacations, enjoying quiet dinners, celebrating birthdays, began to circulate online. For many, Edison's openness was revolutionary. He became living proof that love, even love between two men, could look ordinary, domestic, joyful. There were weekends filled with laughter, mornings spent planning their future, nights when the world outside seemed to fade and only their shared heartbeat mattered. They built routines like any other couple. Grocery shopping, choosing furniture, even arguing over the little things. What color curtains to buy, who should cook dinner, how to spend the holidays. In those everyday moments, Edison found a happiness he had once thought was reserved only for others. To outsiders, their life resembled a fairy tale. A young, handsome couple, openly in love, daring to create a home in a world that still questioned their right to exist. But to Edison, it was more than appearances. It was redemption. For the boy who once sat in a classroom in China, terrified of his own heartbeat, now to stand as a married man was nothing short of miraculous. And yet, what made this chapter so powerful was not only the romance itself, but the symbolism it carried. Edison's wedding was a statement to every closeted young man or woman watching from afar. You are not alone. Your love is not impossible. Each photo of his wedding day, each smile captured, was a quiet revolution against shame. The years that followed were filled with memories that glistened like fragments of a dream. They traveled together, took photos by the sea, celebrated milestones with friends. Edison shared glimpses of their life on social media, not for validation, but as a way to normalize what had once been hidden. He wanted the world to see that gay love could be as real, as messy, and as beautiful as any other. To watch them was to believe in love again. For those who stumbled upon their story online, it was like opening the pages of a modern romance novel, except this one was real. Edison and Josh weren't characters in a movie, they were flesh and blood, and their love was proof that sometimes dreams do come true. But underneath the fairy tale, the truth remained fragile. Every love story, no matter how radiant, carries the weight of human imperfection. Their journey, though filled with light, also carried shadows that would eventually test their bond. Still, in those early years, Edison held on to one unshakable truth. For a moment in time, he had everything he had ever dreamed of. And perhaps that is the essence of this chapter. Not an end, but a beginning. The courage to love, the audacity to marry, the beauty of building a life together when the world still whispers no. Edison's first marriage may not have lasted forever, but it gave him something invaluable. The knowledge that his love was true, his heart was worthy, and his truth was worthy of being seen in the light. So what can we learn from this part of his journey? That sometimes, even when love doesn't last, it still matters. A brief marriage can still change lives, his own and the lives of those who see themselves reflected in his story. Edison fans' first great love wasn't just about two men. It was about a community that watched, learned, and dared to believe. Because love, whether it lasts a lifetime or a moment, has the power to transform us. It can break chains, erase shame, and inspire courage. And for Edison, that first great love, that first open marriage, was the spark that lit the way for everything that followed. But every fairy tale has its dark side, and every love story, no matter how bright, can be tested by time. After years of laughter, quiet dinners, and dreams of eternal life, cracks began to appear. By 2015, what had seemed like a miracle was unraveling. Edison Fan and Josh Taylor, the couple who had walked down the aisle with courage and burning hope, now faced the unthinkable: divorce. The announcement shocked many. To the outside world, Edison's marriage seemed to prove that true love could triumph over prejudice. To those who had followed his journey, their union was a symbol of possibility. But love, whether gay or straight, was still love. It was vulnerable, fragile, and wounded. Behind the carefully crafted photos and carefully curated moments is the raw truth of two people who cannot hold on. For Edison, the breakup was more than a private pain. It was a public breakdown. He had built his image on honesty, sharing life's moments openly, and now that openness had exposed him. Every rumor, every online comment, every judgment from strangers was like a knife cutting into his fragile heart. He turned to social media to express his pain. The words he wrote were heavy with pain. The loss of love, the emptiness of a home once filled with laughter, the unbearable silence after a broken vow. For a man who had kissed his husband under the eyes of hundreds of people, it now felt like those very eyes were watching him, waiting to see if he would collapse. The pain was compounded by the society around him. In parts of Asia, where homosexuality was still viewed harshly, Edison's divorce was not simply seen as the end of a relationship, but was used as a weapon. Critics taunted him, saying that his marriage was doomed from the start, that same-sex love could never last. For Edison, each insult brought back the fear he had felt as a boy in China. He had fought so hard to prove his love was real, and now the world seemed to use that pain as evidence against him. There is a special cruelty to losing love, when that love was once an act of defiance. For Edison, the collapse of his marriage felt like a betrayal, not just by Josh, but by the very dream he had believed in. The nights became endless, the days faded. He describes it as standing in the ruins of something he once thought impregnable. But then, in that rubble, something else began to form. Pain can be destructive, but it can also open up space for growth. In the calm after the storm, Edison began to realize that his story was not defined by the failure of a marriage, but by the courage to love openly in the first place. The wound was deep, yes, but within that wound was evidence of his humanity. His divorce reminded the world of an often forgotten truth. Same-sex couples are not immune to suffering. Love is not a political symbol, not an idealized fantasy. It is messy, fragile, and sometimes broken. By living in her pain publicly, Edison has shown that LGBTQ+ love is just as real, complex, and vulnerable as any other kind of love. For those who observe from afar, Edison's pain is strangely liberating. It shatters the stereotype that same-sex love must be perfect to be worthy. It shows that sincerity is not about never failing. It's about daring to try, knowing that you might fall. Edison's pain is harsh, but also transformative. From it, he finally finds a strength he didn't know he had. And perhaps that's the lesson hidden in the silences of this chapter. That even in pain, there is meaning. That to love, to lose, to grieve, is to live fully. Edison's story is now not about triumph. It's about perseverance, about overcoming the weight of judgment, the cruelty of strangers, and the silence of an empty house, and still finding the courage to go on. So as you listen to this part of his journey, let me ask you, how did you feel after hearing about his broken marriage? Did you only see the pain, or did you also see the resilience it inspired? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your voice, your perspective, will become a part of this story too. But love did not end with heartbreak. For Edison, pain did not close his heart. It opened an entirely new chapter, love for a little life. After experiencing the losses of marriage, he chose to place his heart into the journey of fatherhood. In 2017, through surrogacy, Edison welcomed the birth of his son Frederick, a child who brought him light and hope. From that moment on, Edison's love was no longer centered only on a partner or a lover, but rose into a sacred paternal bond. A gay man, single, raising his child with a wide-open heart. This image moved millions and changed the way people looked at love and family. To many, it was a surprise. A single gay man, still scarred by a broken marriage, suddenly deciding to raise a child on his own. But for Edison, the decision was not sudden. It was the culmination of years of yearning. He had always dreamed of a family, but life had shown him that family did not have to look like tradition. If romantic love had broken his heart, perhaps fatherhood could heal it. The first time Edison held Frederick, he felt something change. All the noise of the world, the criticism, the gossip, the shame was silenced. In his arms was a new beginning, fragile yet strong, demanding yet full of promise. The tiny heartbeat seemed to answer every doubt he had ever harbored. Yes, he was good enough. Yes, he could love again. Yes, this love would not betray him. But being a single father was not easy. Nights that should have been filled with parties or quiet dinners with his partner were now filled with sleepless nights and bottles. There were diapers to change, tears to soothe, and endless worries about the future. Would his son face bullying because of who his father was? Will society's judgment fall on this innocent child? Edison carried these questions with him, but he also had the strength to face them. Because in his role as a father, Edison found redemption. Every laugh from Frederick, every milestone, his first steps, his first words, became a stitch to patch up the wounds left by divorce. Edison learned to find joy in the little things. Cooking breakfast while Frederick played on the kitchen floor, telling bedtime stories that ended with a whispered "I love you," capturing candid moments that no one else saw. These were images of love that didn't need to be flaunted on social media because they were forever etched in his heart. Of course, not everyone understood. Some questioned his decision. Others thought he was selfish for bringing a child into an unconventional family. In some corners of society, whispers rang out, "A homosexual man can't be a father. A child needs a mother." But Edison had learned long ago that silence helps no one. He responded not with arguments, but with love. Every day that Frederick grew up healthy, happy, and loved was proof enough. In this chapter of his life, Edison no longer sought recognition from the outside world. His focus shifted from public recognition to private devotion. He didn't need applause for his courage or sympathy for his suffering. What he needed was to show his son a life built on honesty, to prove to Frederick that love, in all its forms, was real, and that even when a marriage falls apart, love endures. For Edison, fatherhood was more than raising a child. It was about regaining faith in love. It's the realization that the strongest relationships aren't always romantic. Sometimes they're familial, built on patience, sacrifice, and unconditional care. Through fatherhood, he rewrote his story. From the ashes of a broken marriage rose the strength of a devoted father. And perhaps this is where his story becomes universal. Because who among us hasn't faced loss? Who hasn't wondered if we could love again? Edison's answer didn't lie in the arms of another man, at least not yet. It lay in the heartbeat of his child. So now, as you reflect on this chapter in his journey, let me ask you, how do you feel about Edison's decision to become a father after his heartbreak? Do you see courage, sacrifice, or something else entirely? And one more thing, we'd love to know, what country are you watching this video in? Leave a comment below and we'll get back to you. But life has a way of surprising us. Just when we think the story has settled, another chapter opens with new light. After years of being a single father, pouring his heart into raising his son and healing from the scars of a broken marriage, Edison Fan was no longer searching for love. He had found fulfillment in fatherhood, stability in routine, and courage in living authentically. Yet as fate often writes it, love has a way of appearing when you least expect it. And that love came in the form of Rob Seo, a South Korean model whose presence would transform Edison's story into something close to a fairy tale. Their first meeting was almost cinematic. Two men from different backgrounds, Edison from China, Rob from Korea, crossing paths in a world where the odds seemed stacked against them. What began as a conversation soon unfolded into something more profound. A recognition, a spark, the kind of connection that makes the world suddenly feel smaller and infinitely more beautiful. Edison, who had once wondered if his heart could love again after divorce, now found it beating with new life. For Rob, Edison wasn't just another person in the modeling and fashion world. He was a man who had lived, who had hurt, who had dared to love publicly and suffered for it, but who still carried a tenderness that drew people in. And for Edison, Rob represented possibility. Not just a partner, but a companion who understood what it meant to love boldly in a society that still too often whispered disapproval. Their love story blossomed not in secrecy, but in the open air of the digital age. Photos of them began to appear on Instagram, laughing together on a quiet afternoon, holding hands on city streets, sharing meals that looked as joyful as they felt. To the outside world, these were snapshots. To them, they were declarations. In every picture, in every smile, Edison and Rob were telling the world, "Our love is real, our love is here, and it deserves to be seen." There was something extraordinary in their ordinariness. They weren't trying to perform perfection. They showed the simple human side of love. Two men teasing each other over coffee, celebrating milestones with friends, traveling with Edison's son, building not just a relationship but the shape of a family. For those watching, it was as though Edison had been given a second chance at love. And this time, the universe had matched him with someone who fit like a missing piece. And then came the moment that would forever be etched into their story. The proposal. June 20th, 24, Paris. The City of Lights, long known as the City of Lovers, became the stage for one of the most romantic scenes of Edison's life. There, beneath the Parisian sky, Rob knelt down and asked the question that carried the weight of their journey. "Will you marry me?" Imagine the scene. The Eiffel Tower in the distance, the glow of evening lights reflecting on the Seine, and two men, Asian men, who had carried the weight of cultural silence, embracing in front of the world. When Edison said yes, it wasn't just an answer to Rob. It was an answer to every young person who had ever wondered if true love could be theirs. The photos of their proposal flooded social media, sparking headlines, drawing congratulations from across the globe. What might once have been scandalous in parts of Asia was now celebrated as a triumph of love. For Edison, that moment in Paris was not just about personal happiness, it was about vindication. Years earlier, his first marriage had ended in heartbreak, and critics had used it to argue that same-sex love was doomed to fail. Now, standing hand in hand with Rob, Edison embodied the truth. Love can fall apart, but it can also rise again, stronger, deeper, and more enduring than before. The image of Edison and Rob in Paris became more than a romantic milestone. It became a symbol. Two Asian men, Chinese and Korean, defying borders, defying prejudice, and standing in the open as a couple. It was, in many ways, the pinnacle of Edison's journey. From the frightened boy in Nanjing who hid his heart, to the young man in New Zealand who dared to come out, to the husband whose marriage crumbled, to the father who found redemption in raising a son, and finally to the man who found love again in the most magical of places. For those who followed Edison's story, this chapter felt like a dream fulfilled. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. It showed that even after loss, after shame, after being broken, love can still find its way back. And sometimes it arrives more beautifully than before. So what can we take away from this chapter? Fairy tales aren't just for movies or novels. They can happen to real people. People who have suffered, people who have been judged, people who have been rejected all their lives. Edison and Rob's love story is a reminder that love isn't a privilege of a few, but a right for everyone. And if this story touches your heart, inspires you, or makes you believe in love more, we invite you to support our channel. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because we'll continue to bring you more stories of courage, resilience, and love that deserve to be heard. Your support means a lot, and it helps us share these voices with more people around the world. And so after Paris, after the fairy tale proposal under the city lights, Edison fans' story comes full circle. From the trembling boy in Nanjing who feared his own heartbeat, to the young man in New Zealand who whispered, "I'm gay," into the mirror, to the brave husband who married, to the grieving man who openly mourned, to the devoted father who found salvation in his son, and finally, to the partner who found love again with Rob Seo. His journey is a tapestry woven with threads of both pain and beauty. This is not just a man's romantic story. It is a chronicle of courage. It is a story of how love, even when it hurts, finds a way to heal. It reminds us that scars are not the end of the story, but proof that we have lived, loved, and endured. In each chapter of Edison's life, love takes on a different shape. First, the innocent thrills of youth, a secret too heavy for a boy to bear. Then the bright glow of first love and marriage, a dream come true until it was no more. Then the dark valley of pain, where the promise of eternal life collapses and the judgment of the world weighs like a storm. And from there, rebirth, fatherhood, where love is no longer passion but sacrifice. Finally, finding romance again in the arms of Rob Seo, proving that second chances do exist, and sometimes love comes more tenderly, more resiliently, and more brilliantly than before. When you step back and see the big picture, it is breathtaking. Edison Fan's life reminds us that love is never one-sided. It can lift us to the sky, and it can also bring us down. It can hurt, and it can also heal. It can frustrate us, and it can also save us. To deny that truth is to deny what it means to be human. And perhaps that is why Edison resonates with so many people across Asia. In societies where silence often suffocates, where family honor can obscure personal truth, he chose to be true to himself. He chose presence over invisibility, authenticity over ease. In doing so, he became something greater than himself. A mirror for those still hiding, a beacon for those still afraid, and a symbol of possibility for those wondering whether their love can withstand the weight of judgment. Edison Fan was not perfect, and he did not claim to be. His marriage was broken. His heart was broken. He was criticized, ridiculed, misunderstood. But through it all, he never stopped believing in love. That persistence, that refusal to give up on love's ability to surprise and renew, is what makes him extraordinary. He shows us that resilience is not about never falling, but about rising again and again, with an open heart. The truth is, same-sex love is no different than any other love. It carries with it the sweetness of intimacy, the pain of loss, the tenderness of family, the joy of commitment. It deserves to be cherished, recognized, and celebrated no less. And Edison's journey is a living testament to that truth. Today, as a father, a fiancé, and an openly gay public figure, Edison Fan is one of Asia's most prominent LGBTQ+ icons. His story isn't just about him. It's about all the young men and women who watch from the shadows, wondering if their lives could be different. It shows them that, yes, love is possible. Yes, family is possible. Yes, happiness is possible. And perhaps most importantly, Edison's story teaches us that vulnerability is not weakness. Loving openly in a world that won't let you, that's strength. Crying openly, grieving honestly, rebuilding your life in the light of day. These are acts of defiance as powerful as any protest. Because in the end, nothing shatters stereotypes like living a life of love without regret. So what can we, the listeners, take away from this journey? That love in all its forms is worth the risk. That even when it hurts, even when it ends, even when it seems impossible, love is still the most transformative force we have. And now, as we close this chapter, we turn the question to you. How do you feel after hearing Edison Fan's story? Do you admire him, criticize him, or simply see yourself reflected in him? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your voice matters. Tell us, do you consider Edison Fan a true symbol of love and resilience in Asia? Edison Fan's story is not only about love gained and lost, but also about courage, resilience, and the power of being true to yourself. Through joy, pain, fatherhood, and second chances, he reminds us that love, in any form, is always worth fighting for. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story touches your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to support us. Your presence means a lot, and we are truly grateful. A K-pop idol, and an attack that shocked the world. But his story doesn't end there. This is the journey of a man who turned pain into strength, fear into freedom, and left a message the world can't ignore. Follow me the end video, because what happens will surprise you, and tell me, what does his courage mean to you? Under the bright lights of K-pop, where flawless choreography and meticulously crafted idols dominate the stage, a figure dares to walk a different path. Imagine the scene. Bright neon colors, exploding stadiums, thousands of voices chanting in unison. Yet, in the center of the storm, a young man stands quietly, almost hidden. His real name is Gotae Seob, but the world knows him as Holland. Unlike many others, propelled by giant entertainment companies and powerful marketing forces, Holland stepped into the spotlight with nothing but his authenticity and individuality. Holland's beginnings were not written in the glitzy offices of Seoul's entertainment giants. There were no secret auditions to groom him for the next star, no high-powered CEOs shaping his image, no filled with mentors guiding his every move. His story begins in the darkest corners of his heart, with a pure and unshakable desire to sing, to perform, to exist without erasing himself. In a society where so many idols sacrifice their true identities just to fit the mold of an industry, take a moment to reflect. In an industry that thrives on the perfect image, where idols are molded into ideals of beauty, perfection, and meticulously constructed illusions, Holland chose a different path. He chose authenticity. And in the flashy world of K-pop, authenticity can be the boldest act of all. While others relentlessly pursue perfection, Holland pursues authenticity. And as many of you know, authenticity rarely comes without a price. Let me ask you this. Have you ever had to carry the burden of hiding who you are just to survive? Maybe at school, at work, or even within your own family. Now imagine having to carry that burden, not in front of a group of people, but in front of an entire nation, a global audience, and an industry built on homogeneity. For Holland, the decision was simple but profound. He wasn't going to hide, even if it meant walking alone, facing rejection, and standing on the fringes of an industry. His first steps were fragile but confident. Without a major label behind him, without a devoted fan base to cheer him on, he released his debut single Neverland in 2018. A song not just about love, but about same-sex love. Do you realize how revolutionary that was? In South Korea, where conversations about LGBTQ+ identity are still fraught, where representation for the masses is largely invisible, Holland stood up and sang his truth. And for the first time, millions around the world heard something. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine hearing Neverland for the first time. Imagine two men holding hands on screen in a K-pop music video. For some, it was shocking. For others, it was cathartic. For countless young fans around the world, it was the first time they saw themselves for who they were, not as outsiders, not as shadows, but as human beings worthy of love, of music, of beauty. Holland's debut was more than a song. It was a lifeline. It was proof that they weren't alone. And this is where the story gets deeper. Holland didn't just release music, he put courage into the world. Every lyric, every note carried weight, not just for him, but for all the listeners who had been told that their love was wrong, their existence was a mistake. Suddenly, K-pop was about more than just glitz and glamour. It was about survival, resistance, and freedom. And that's what made Holland stand out, not as the loudest voice in the room, but as the most authentic. As you listen, I want you to take a moment to reflect with me. Where are you right now? Perhaps in the heart of Seoul, in the hustle and bustle of Los Angeles, somewhere in Europe, or perhaps in a sleepy town where differences still carry risks. Wherever you are, Holland's story touches you, proving that authenticity transcends borders. It's amazing how music can bridge distances, weave connections across worlds. One man's courage ripples out, touching countless lives he may never have met, but forever inspiring. Holland's journey isn't about chasing fame, but about planting something deeper: change, representation, and hope. He steps forward not with flashy choreography or corporate backing, but with raw honesty. And that honesty is far more powerful than the roar of a crowd. As we close the opening chapter of Holland's journey, I invite you to take a closer look. What lies ahead is a story of struggle and triumph, pain and resilience. How does Holland's courage resonate with you? Does it surprise you, stir something within you, or perhaps reflect your own story? Let's share and reflect, because your voice matters in this conversation. And with that, we enter the of Holland's journey, one where the challenges get bigger, the spotlight gets brighter, and every moment takes on new meaning. Stay tuned, because the story is just beginning, and what comes next will take you deeper into his world. In 2018, a young man named Holland made history with his courage, his honesty, and a song called Neverland. If you've heard the song, you know it wasn't just your typical K-pop debut. It wasn't about flashy choreography, expensive stages, or conforming to what an idol should be. It was about truth, and in a world where truth is often hidden, Holland dared to sing it. The music video for Neverland contains a single moment that has sparked discussions far beyond South Korea: a kiss between two young men. It's only a few seconds on screen, but it carries the weight of centuries of silence. In a country where LGBTQ+ representation is largely invisible in mainstream media, it was revolutionary. It was tender, honest, and his way of saying, "This is who I am." And let's be honest, sometimes it only takes a few seconds to move The reaction? Almost immediately, the video was age-restricted in Korea, limiting its visibility for young audiences. But pause for a moment. How could love, expressed in its purest form, be considered inappropriate? That question resonated among millions of comments. Online forums exploded with heated debate. Critics called it provocative, while fans around the world praised its boldness. And within 20 hours, Neverland had surpassed 1 million views, marking it not just a debut, but a cultural statement. So let me ask you this. If you were in Holland's shoes, would you have the courage to take that leap of faith? To risk it all for a moment of authenticity and undeniable truth? His story is more than music. It's a reminder that authenticity is not just a choice, it's a calling. It challenges each of us to reflect and ask ourselves, how much of our truth are we willing to embrace, no matter what the cost? Because in the end, it's not perfection that moves the world. It's courage. Even his name carries a deeper meaning. Holland is more than just a stage persona. It's a tribute to the Netherlands, the first country to legalize same-sex marriage. By choosing the name, he's not just choosing a name, he's making a statement. I respect the battles that have come before me, and I'm ready to keep moving forward. For fans, the decision is deeply symbolic. Holland is more than just an artist. He's proof that names, music, and actions can all inspire change. And when you think about it, his presence on stage is a quiet force, powerful, enduring, and impossible to ignore. But here's the thing, every light has its shadow. The moment marked Holland as the first openly gay idol in K-pop history. It should have been a triumph, a milestone for progress. And in many ways, it was. He became a beacon for countless young people who yearned to see themselves on stage. Yet the bold move that elevated him also stirred up a storm. Behind the scenes, applause was accompanied by whispers, skepticism, and doors quietly closed. Many in the industry chose to keep their distance rather than support him, seeing his courage as a risk rather than a reason to stand by him. Imagine standing in a spotlight, millions cheering, millions criticizing, and an entire nation watching your every move. That weight would crush anyone. But Holland carried it with quiet strength. He knew that stepping into that light, he wasn't just carrying his own dreams, he was carrying the hopes of others, many of whom seemed invisible. And that's a pressure no training program can prepare you for. And that's the emotional climax of this story. Holland's kiss in Neverland is more than just a kiss. It's a statement, a hope, a piece of history. It marks the beginning of a new conversation in K-pop, one that cannot turn away from LGBTQ+ voices. For some fans, it's the first time their love has been reflected in an idol's story. For others, it's a call to open their eyes to a truth that's long been forgotten. That's the paradox of art. It can comfort those who feel invisible, but it can also disrupt comfort, forcing the world to confront what it wants to keep hidden. How do you feel about this in Holland's journey? Do you see it as a victory, a gamble, or perhaps both? I'd love to hear your take, because your voice is part of this story. When you share your comments, you're not only responding, but you're also contributing to the conversation that Holland himself started the day Neverland was released. But remember, this is just the beginning. Along with the light of recognition comes the darkness of isolation. As Holland's fame spreads around the world, so does the resistance he faces. And in the next part of this journey, we'll delve into his struggles, his loneliness, and his fight to protect his dream when the world seems determined to take it away. So let me ask you, where are you watching today? And what does Holland's courage mean to you? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this story isn't just about one artist, it's about all of us, exploring what it really means to be authentic, even when it comes at a cost. And as we move into the next, remember this. Every act of honesty has a cost, but it also has the power to shape hearts, inspire change, and leave its mark on history itself. Holland's story is one of resilience, courage, and the quiet weight of a solitary dream. Imagine what it's like to be an artist without the backing of a powerful management company, without the safety net, without the machinery that so many K-pop idols rely on to get ahead. There's no team shaping his image, no shield protecting him from the world. Every step forward, every song he releases, is a battle he fights alone. And when he encounters setbacks, he doesn't give up. Instead, he turns obstacles into motivation, proving that even in isolation, determination can pave a path that no one else dares to tread. Crowdfunding is about more than just numbers. It's about belief. Imagine thousands of hands reaching out, strangers and fans alike, saying, "We believe in you." That moment was proof that even when the gatekeepers of the industry slammed the door shut, people were willing to open the window for him. Imagine Holland sitting at his computer that night, watching the donations pile up. Can you see the tears in his eyes? The disbelief, the gratitude, the overwhelming emotion? One supporter wrote, "Thank you for giving me the courage to accept who I am and keep moving forward, no matter how hard it gets." But despite his fans' love for him, his journey has not been easy. His music, intimate, bold, and unflinchingly honest. Songs like "I'm Not Afraid" and "I'm So Afraid" are more than just melodies. They also contain truths that some people are not ready to face. Instead of embracing his honesty, the system often suppresses it, labeling it as controversial to mainstream audiences. The irony, while countless other artists sing freely about love, Holland's voice has been held back by restrictions, simply because his truth doesn't fit the mold. And when local media ignored him, when critics mocked or ostracized him, the loneliness was even heavier. The burden of being different, of daring to be yourself in an industry built on homogeneity, is heavier than most people can imagine. Imagine walking into interviews that few people asked for, or releasing music that the mainstream refused to acknowledge. Silence, in moments like these, is not just absence, it's rejection. Have you ever been in a room full of people and felt invisible? That's the isolation Holland carries. But instead of breaking it, he's turned it into art that speaks for those who can't speak for themselves. This is where Holland's story comes to a head. He's not just making music, he's fighting for the right to be himself. His very existence challenges a society that isn't ready to accept him. But he stands tall. Imagine a lone figure fighting against a raging river. Every step feels helpless. The current keeps urging him to stop, but he keeps singing. His voice, fragile yet resilient, echoes through. Proof that even the smallest sound can carry hope in a noisy world. And this is the moment I want you to really think about. Holland's pain is not unique to him. It reflects all of us. How many times have you felt abandoned, or pressured to hide who you are just to belong? How many times have you been told to be quiet, to conform, when your heart yearns only to be free? Holland's voice reminds us that even when the waves are crashing down on you, your song still carries weight. And who knows, just who knows, your courage could be the spark that helps someone else rise. Isn't that a truth worth holding on to? So tell me, how did you feel when you heard this part of his story? Did it inspire you, or did it bring back memories of your own struggles, moments where you felt silenced, or times when you found the strength to keep going? I'd love to know. Leave a comment. Where are you watching tonight, and how has Holland's journey touched your heart? Every word you share becomes a part of this story, adding a voice to the chorus. And who knows, maybe someone reading your comment will feel a little less alone, a little braver to keep singing their own song. Think about it for a moment. The power of art to move hearts, to spark conversations, even when institutions try to silence them. That's why Holland's story is so important. It's not just about one singer, it's about everyone who has ever stood on the edge of doubt and chosen to keep going. His struggles remind us that presence has a cost, but it also has a purpose. And maybe you're watching this video because that, no matter how rough the waters get, you have the strength to keep going, and in doing so, you can light the way for others. Because this is just one in his remarkable journey. In the next installment, we'll delve deeper into how Holland turned adversity into strength, and how his music became not just a statement of identity, but a beacon of light for those who needed it most. So stay tuned. And before we go any further, I want to know, where in the world are you listening to music, and what emotions are stirring inside you as you walk with Holland through this darkness, step by step, toward the light of what's to come? In May 2022, under the neon lights of Itaewon, a neighborhood often considered a safe haven for the LGBTQ+ community in Seoul, Holland faced a night that would profoundly shape his journey. What began as a normal evening turned into a moment of hostility, as a stranger confronted him with hateful words, an insult that reduced his identity to something dirty and unworthy. Even in that fragile moment, his determination to be true to himself shone even brighter. That night, Itaewon was not just a backdrop of bright lights, it was also a stage that tested Holland's courage, and his determination to be true to himself shone even brighter. Imagine that moment. An artist who built his career on honesty, suddenly being targeted for that very truth. The incident left him shaken, not only in body, but even more so in spirit. While the physical pain eventually faded, the emotional weight lingered, reminding him of the vulnerability that comes with living authentically. Imagine with me the loneliness of standing on the line between recognition and vulnerability, and the bitter irony of having to endure the very truth that made him a source of hope. This story is about more than just a painful encounter. It reveals what it truly means to be brave in a world that isn't always ready to accept you. Itaewon, a place often seen as a sanctuary, became, in that instant, a reminder of how fragile safety can be. Although the matter was reported to the authorities, the deeper impact was carried within, echoing far beyond that night. And let me ask you, how would you feel if your entire being was reduced to a single insult? If your body was damaged simply for loving the way you love, for existing as you are? These are the questions Holland was forced to confront, and in that moment he shouldered the weight of an entire community's fears. He became something more than a pop idol. He became a symbol of the risks that come with fame and the courage it takes to stay true to yourself. But let's not forget the resilience that defines Holland, because even in pain, even in moments of terror, he chose not to retreat into silence. Instead, this incident exposed the devastating cost of honesty. Yes, but it also reminded the world why his voice mattered in the first place. For every fan who felt invisible, Holland's pain resonated as a warning, but also as a call to solidarity, that no matter how high the price, being true to yourself was worth it. News of the attack spread far beyond Itaewon. Fans around the world took to social media with messages of love and solidarity. Many shared their own stories of harassment, their own scars, some visible, others hidden. Holland's pain became a mirror for thousands to see their own struggles. In that sense, he was never truly alone, even as he lay in his hospital bed. The world was watching. The world was grieving with him. But alongside the sadness was a surge of anger, a question that never went away. How could this happen? How could hatred strike so openly in a place that was supposed to be safe, in a space for love? For a society still learning to accept LGBTQ+ life, the incident serves as a stark reminder of the challenges faced by those who choose to live openly. It's a wake-up call, and that's why this story is not just personal, but cultural. What happened to Holland shows that the journey toward equality is still very much a struggle, even in places we believe are safe. And isn't it heartbreaking to realize that sometimes the very spaces we trust to protect us can be the ones that test us the most? But Holland's journey didn't end with fear. He later spoke out courageously, choosing transparency over silence. He acknowledged his pain, shock, and fear, but he also made it clear that he would not let the attack define him. "I'm proud of who I am," he said, words that carried the weight of someone who had been tested by hate but still chose love. That resilience made him a symbol more powerful than an idol. And here's what I want you to think about. What does it mean to keep showing up, even when the world makes it difficult? Holland's choice to keep going, to keep moving forward, to sing, to love, becomes a quietly powerful act. It shows that trials can shake us, but they can't erase the truth of who we are. And maybe, just maybe, it's courage, not perfection, that sparks real change, not just in music, but in the hearts of people everywhere. So I want to hear from you. Where are you watching tonight? How does Holland's story make you think about the courage it takes to stand firm in the face of adversity? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your voice, your presence, matters. We'll see how Holland turned this dark moment into strength and how his resilience became a light for others. Stay tuned, the journey is just beginning. He never chose silence. From the beginning, Holland bucked the trend of conformity in an industry where silence is safer and perfection often means hiding the truth. But Holland chose honesty. And that choice wasn't just bold, it was transformative. It shaped him from an aspiring artist into a voice the world couldn't ignore. In 2023, Holland released Number Boy. At first glance, it seems like a simple song about heartbreak, about wounds that never fully heal. But listen closely and you'll sense something deeper. Rebirth. It's the voice of a man who has weathered a storm and returned with a fire in his chest. Each lyric is like an open wound, carefully stitched together with hope. And perhaps you felt it too, listening to a song that seems to whisper your own secrets. That's the gift Holland has given through Number Boy. Perhaps the moment that truly shook the world was when Holland revealed he was in a relationship, openly sharing that he had a boyfriend. Not metaphorically, but completely sincerely. And what's more, he talked about his dream of one day getting married. Think about how rare that is in K-pop. A world where love is often forbidden, where idols are expected to live up to some perfect fantasy. Holland shattered that fantasy. He replaced perfection with truth. And in doing so, he gave thousands of fans a sense of freedom, a reflection of themselves that they had been longing to see. And his journey wasn't limited to Korea. He took his music all over Europe. London, Paris, Berlin, where fans waved rainbow flags and sang along to every word as if it were their own story. Imagine being there, standing shoulder to shoulder with strangers, suddenly feeling like family, all united by the courage of one artist. That energy, that wave of familiarity, it wasn't just a concert. It was a statement that love, in all its forms, deserves to be celebrated. Can you feel it right now, just by picturing the scene? The international press saw it too. Teen Vogue, Out, Them, Paper Magazine. They all gave him a title that no one thought possible: Asian LGBTQ+ icon. For decades, the idea of an openly gay idol thriving in K-pop was considered unthinkable. But Holland did more than that. He went above and beyond. He didn't just make music, he made history. The impact was felt like a tidal wave. Young fans wrote to him, "Because of you, I found the courage to come out. Because of you, I believe that love is possible for me too." Imagine what that must feel like. Knowing that your courage inspired courage in others. Realizing that your struggles were transformed into their strength. It is both a burden that Holland carries and a gift he continues to give, every day. And beyond the letters, Holland has sparked a broader conversation in South Korea. For the first time, mainstream media can no longer ignore the voices of the LGBTQ+ community. His message isn't just about identity, it's about humanity. By stepping in front of the camera and refusing to disappear, he's created a space for dialogue where silence once reigned. Even his critics can't ignore him. Think for a moment about the loneliness of those early years, walking into rooms where whispers followed, reading hateful comments that tried to erase him from existence, but still clinging to his music like a lifeline. That's not weakness. That's resilience expressed in every beat he creates. And here's the surprising thing. The same industry that tried to marginalize him now sees him as proof of progress. The outcast has become an icon. Isn't that powerful? When Holland steps on stage, he's not just an idol, he's a role model. Every lyric reflects a truth his fans yearn to see, that they, too, deserve to be loved, just the way they are. That's why his concerts feel more like family reunions than performances. People cry, laugh, and sing together, not just to honor Holland, but to see themselves through him. Remember this, K-pop has long been built on perfect images. But Holland broke that silence. He showed us that perfect images can't heal, only sincerity can. And through that choice, he redefined the very meaning of artistic freedom. When you watch Holland, don't just look at the artist himself, look at the ripple effect. A girl in Seoul finally speaking her truth. A boy in Brazil stopping hiding his feelings. A teenager in New York daring to dream of pride instead of shame. Holland may sing in Korean, but his message touches the hearts of everyone. So tell me, where are you watching? Does his story leave you feeling understood, inspired, maybe even braver than before? Share in the comments, I'll read it. Because this isn't just his journey, it's our journey. Holland's story has never been about wealth, fame, or headlines. It has always been about courage. In a world where idols are expected to follow a script, he chose to write his own. He stood before the world, vulnerable but resilient, and declared, "This is me." And in doing so, he created something no title can measure, no chart can define, a legacy written in truth and courage. Stop and think about this. How often do we hide parts of ourselves in our daily lives? How many times do we choose silence over truth, dimming our own light just to survive? Holland chose differently. He faced the cameras, the fans, and an industry built on homogeneity. And with calm determination, he said, "I am worthy of love, and so are you." That wasn't just brave, it was transformative. It made history. His life truth is simple yet profound. You deserve to be loved. Love yourself first. It's not an album lyric nor a catchphrase for fans to chant. It's a lifeline, an anthem, a call to authenticity. In a culture obsessed with the perfect image, Holland offers something far more powerful: authenticity. And let me ask you right now, as you listen to his story, what stirs inside you? Do you hear echoes of your own path? Do you feel the hidden spark inside you begin to glow a little brighter? Because what Holland leaves behind is more than just his own. It's a mirror. A mirror for anyone who has ever yearned to be seen, to be accepted. A testament to music that transcends boundaries and touches the heart. Holland doesn't just make music, he creates space. He turns pain into strength, vulnerability into resilience. Every time he takes the stage, he proves that authenticity is not weakness, but the truest form of strength. And that is why his influence will outlast trends and fleeting headlines. When he released Neverland, it wasn't just a debut, it was a statement. A statement against silence, shame, against the notion that love should be hidden. By daring to live his truth, he gave others the courage to embrace theirs. Somewhere in the world, a teenager sits alone, headphones on, afraid to reveal their true self. Then they press the play button on a Holland song. And suddenly, they hear a voice, fragile but unshakable, whispering, "You're not broken. You're not wrong. You deserve to be loved." For the first time, the teenager breathes out without fear. That breath, that fleeting moment of freedom, is Holland's mark. The beauty of Holland's story is that it's not just for those who share his pain, but for all of us. His courage transcends boundaries, because each of us, in our own way, knows what it's like to hide behind a mask. To fear judgment, to be silent. Holland's song remains, "Be yourself, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when the price is too high." So let me ask you, what would change if you stopped hiding? If you took Holland's courage into your life? This isn't just a story about a K-pop idol. It's an invitation to live without regrets. And that's why his message remains so timeless. Long after the spotlight has gone out, his words remain, "You deserve to be loved. Love yourself first." No trend can erase that, because it speaks to the human heart. So tell me, what part of Holland's message resonates with you the most? Does it give you hope? Does it challenge you? Or does it simply remind you that you are never alone? I'd love to hear from you. Share in the comments. Let me know where you're watching and how you're feeling right now. Because this isn't just Holland's story, it's our story. It's about all of us learning to live more authentically, love more deeply, and build a world where no one feels the need to hide. And if Holland's voice has resonated with you, let it serve as a reminder. Your story matters, and the world needs to hear it. Thank you for being here and for sharing this story with me. If it touched you, if it gave you strength or a new perspective, I invite you to subscribe, follow, and continue to support this channel. Together, we will continue to bring powerful stories that leave a mark on our viewers. See you in the next video. The idol who once captivated Asia with his flowing hair and androgynous face suddenly disappeared. Instead, a man shattered the illusion, held hands with another man in front of millions, and rebuilt himself into a strong and resilient figure. This is not just a transformation, it is a revolution of love and identity. This is Xingye. Are you ready to discover the legend behind the beauty and the courage that overcame it all? Xingye was born in 1993 in Guizhou, China. a foggy, mountainous province steeped in tradition. His childhood was quiet, far from the limelight. His childhood was idyllic, marked by schoolwork, the rhythms of family life, and the small rituals that define provincial life. Those years offered no hint that he would one day become an internet sensation. But life rarely announces its plans. In 2016, a few photos of him began circulating online. At first, they seemed like just another set of portraits, until people took a closer look. The young man in the photos had shoulder-length black hair that framed a strikingly symmetrical face. His features were gentle, but his eyes radiated power. He was unlike your average celebrity or pop star. Instead, he looked as if he had stepped out of a painting, the kind that hangs in a museum, timeless and inviolable. From that moment on, Xing Yi's fame spread across Asia. He was celebrated in China, admired in Japan, followed in Vietnam, and revered wherever he appeared. People called it genderless beauty, a timeless, stereotype-defying charm. The LGBTQ+ community saw him as an icon, someone who pushed boundaries and redefined beauty. His long hair, sharp features, and cold, almost untouchable demeanor seemed straight out of a comic book. In no time, Xing Yi was no longer just a man. He was a phenomenon, with one of the fastest-growing fan communities on social media in Asia. The reaction on social media was immediate. Users reposted his photos, accompanied by captions of amazement and disbelief. Too perfect to be real, some said. Others compared him to characters in ancient paintings or modern manga. Within weeks, the photos had gone viral. Xing Yi was no longer an anonymous boy from Guizhou. He was the long-haired beauty, a new icon of internet culture. Mainstream media was quick to respond. Articles praised him in almost poetic terms. One described him as a figure straight out of a watercolor painting. Dreamy, mysterious, impossible to ignore. Another declared him the new face of genderless beauty, noting how he seemed to blur the lines between masculinity and femininity. He wasn't just attractive, he was also iconic. To audiences, Xing Yi represented something rare, a blend of strength and vulnerability. A reminder that beauty need not conform to a narrow definition. For some, he was a role model. For others, he was a challenge. His long hair was more than a hairstyle. It was a statement, a mark of his difference, a symbol of identity. But the very symbolism that elevated him also limited him. People began to expect him to always appear as the long-haired star. Every photo, every public appearance was compared to that first viral moment. It was as if his identity had been reduced to a single frame. And while the online community applauded, Xing Yi quietly bore the burden of living up to an image that was never meant to define his entire life. Behind the scenes, he felt the limits of being admired but not understood. The online community reveled in the mystery, but Xing Yi understood the price. Strangers talked about his face, his hair, his body, but few bothered to ask about his feelings. He was admired, yes, but also isolated, seen by millions, but truly understood by none. That loneliness followed him, like a shadow following his every step. Later, he described it as life behind glass. Everyone could see, everyone could comment, but no one could enter. He was both praised and trapped by the beauty that made his name. The more people shared his photos, the more he felt the distance between him and real human relationships. But life always has unexpected turns. Amidst all that noise, fans reposting photos, newspapers fabricating stories about his identity and criticism of his appearance, a person entered his world, someone who would change it forever. That person saw more than just long hair or viral fame. He did not see Xing Yi as an icon, but as a man, human and vulnerable. That man was Han Zhen. Han Zhen had his own beauty, handsome, stylish, calm. While the world saw Xing Yi as a distant picture, Han Zhen saw him as a person worthy of love. And in that recognition, in the transformation from image to intimacy, a love story began. The photos made Xingye's name, the long hair made him an icon, but it was fate, not publicity, that brought him to Han Zhen. And with that meeting, the icon became a companion, and the icon became a man willing to live a life not defined by strangers on the internet, but by true love. What do you think? Was it fate that brought them together, or was it courage that allowed Xingye to finally open up? Share your thoughts below. And as we move into the next chapter, we'll discover who Han Zhen really is and how his presence reshaped Xingye's world. Han Zhen entered Xingye's life as a fateful turning point. Born in 1996 in Fujian, Han Zhen did not come from the celebrity or glossy magazine world. The first time he caught the public's attention came in the simplest way. A natural photo of him working at a coffee shop. His sleeves were rolled up, focused on the work at hand, not paying any attention to the camera. That simple yet extremely attractive photo went viral on social media. Viewers were impressed not only by his sharp features, but also by the calm, confident energy he exuded. Very quickly, the online community found another face to admire. But Han Zhen was more than just a photo. He entered the modeling industry, explored fashion, and built his own identity. People admired his style, the way he seamlessly transitioned from refined elegance to casual style. In the comments, fans compared him to a movie star, calling him a male lead who doesn't need a script. However, behind that flashy exterior, what defines him most clearly isn't his looks. It's his love of life. When his worlds and Xingye's collided, everything changed. Xingye, the iconic long-haired man who's known throughout Asia, captured the hearts of audiences with his androgynous beauty. Han Zhen, with his strong masculinity and charisma, provided an impressive balance. When they were together, they were a completely opposite couple. Mysterious and innocent, gentle and strong, dreamy and real. The first time they were photographed together, the internet exploded. Their pictures went viral, and fans rushed to comment. One quote captured the mood better than any headline. "Just seeing two handsome men standing next to each other is enough. But if they truly love each other, it would be even better." People don't just admire beauty, they also hope for love. And love is exactly what they found. Just as the world had predicted, the relationship between Xingye and Han Zhen grew deeper. They were more than just two admired figures sharing a frame. They were life partners, soulmates. They saw each other beyond appearances, beyond labels, beyond the endless gossip about fame. What connected them was not image, it was recognition. The rare and powerful recognition of two souls who could look into each other's eyes and see the truth. For Xingye, his long hair, once just a symbol of beauty, suddenly took on a new meaning. That flowing hair, once admired by millions of strangers, was now part of a love story seen only through the eyes of one man. It brushed his shoulder as Han Zhen reached out to him. It blew in the wind as they walked together. It was not just a brand, but also a bond between them. A reminder that the very image that once made him feel alone had now brought him to someone who loved him for who he was. To the public, their relationship was more than a rumor. It was a revelation. The image of Xingye and Han Zhen together broke stereotypes and created something rare in Asian popular culture. Two men in love who chose not to hide it. Their story spoke without shouting that love, true love, was stronger than fear, stronger than expectation, and stronger than prejudice. For the LGBTQ+ community, their courage carries immense weight. It's more than beauty, it's honesty, it's representation, it's standing up to the world and proving that their love is as real, as deep, and as admirable as any other. And for young people watching across Asia, their story has become a source of strength. Many see in them proof that it's possible to live openly, love openly, and be proud of both. Strip away the headlines, the fame, the carefully crafted images, and what remains is simple, powerful, and true. Two men, side by side, daring to love in a world that doesn't always make it easy. And that's what makes their story timeless. To everyone watching, let this be a reminder. Love is never something to be hidden. It's something to be cherished, celebrated, and lived to the fullest. Whoever you are, whoever you love, your story matters, your heart matters, and your love deserves to be free. Now, we want to know, where are you watching this story from? What country are you watching tonight from? Share your answers in the comments below. And as we move forward in our journey, we'll see how Xingye and Hanzhen's decision to live openly not only changed their lives, but also empowered millions of others. May 2, 2018. In China, that day is known as 5/2 Confession Day, a day when couples freely express their love. For many, it is a sweet tradition, but for Xingye, it was the day he rewrote his story forever. Before that, the online community knew him as the long-haired beauty, a man with a striking genderless appearance who attracted attention across Asia. Millions admired his flowing hair, sharp features, and mysterious demeanor. But admiration can sometimes be lonely. Despite the endless praise, few have ever seen the real person behind that image or known the heart beating beneath the fame. That changed on May 2nd when Xingye stood before the world and chose sincerity over silence. That day, he introduced his partner, Hanzhen, not as a friend, not as a colleague, but as the man he loved. It was a bold statement, one that defied the unwritten rules of celebrity culture. While others might have hidden it, Xingye did the opposite. He opened the door and showed the world the truth. His beauty was not just a physical appearance admired in photos, but also a reflection of his courage to love fearlessly. The media took notice. Headlines spread like wildfire, describing the moment as a breakthrough. One article captured the impact in poignant terms. Xingye's love story has inspired countless young people, especially in the LGBTQ+ community, for one simple reason. He has never been shy about showing his affection for the person he loves. And the images told the story better than any headline could. Images of Xingye and Hanzhen walking hand in hand, smiling together at events, sharing everyday moments, shopping, traveling, laughing over a cup of coffee. These were not staged publicity stunts. They were glimpses of something very real. Two men being their true selves together. For fans, these images were more than just rumors. They became symbols. In every hand held, in every smile shared, there was evidence that love could exist beyond fear. In cultures where same-sex relationships are often relegated to the shadows, Xingye and Hanzhen chose to step into the light. And in doing so, they allowed countless others to imagine a life where their love was celebrated rather than hidden. Xingye's long hair, once a symbol of his beauty, became something new that day. It frames his face in photos with Hanzhen, no longer just a sign of bisexuality, but a symbol of courage. It reminds people that the same qualities that made him an icon, his refusal to conform, his willingness to be different, are the same qualities that made him brave enough to love openly. His hair, once a symbol of mystery, now defines his freedom. The influence spread outward. Young people across Asia looked to their story and found strength. Some saw in Xingye a reminder that it is possible to be authentic, even in the face of judgment. Others saw in Hanzhen a quiet reassurance that love can be lasting, solid, and sincere. Together they proved that love between two men is not something strange or mysterious. It is simply love. Pure, sincere, and beautiful. Their relationship, expressed openly and unapologetically, has become a benchmark for the LGBTQ+ community. Representation is so important, and in them, people saw a new possibility. That being yourself means being loved, not abandoned. That courage leads not only to acceptance, but also to inspiration. Their love story, though seemingly dreamy, is also deeply real, and that balance is what makes it unforgettable. The lesson of May 2nd, 2018 is one that goes beyond fandom or fashion. It's about truth, about daring to choose authenticity, even when the world might prefer a mask. It's about remembering that beauty isn't just about how you look, but how you live and how you love. Xingye and Han Zhen's public stand-up is more than just a romantic gesture. It's an act of freedom. And that, perhaps, is the greatest gift their story has to offer. A reminder that love is always stronger when it is sincere. To everyone watching, let this be a lesson you take with you. Love is not something to be hidden, it is to be lived fully, celebrated openly, and deeply appreciated. Whoever you are, whoever you love, your story matters. Your love is real, and it deserves to be seen. If you were inspired by this story, we invite you to support our channel, like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to bring you powerful stories of love, courage, and truth. And now, we want to hear from you. What lessons do you learn from the love story of Xingye and Han Zhen? And where are you watching tonight? Share your country in the comments below, and let's celebrate the beauty of love without borders. Coming out on May 2nd, 2018 was not the end of Xingye's journey. It was only the beginning. Once the world knew his truth, the next step was deciding how he wanted to live that truth. For years, he had been defined by one thing: the long, flowing hair that made him an icon across Asia. That hair had given him fame, had drawn admiration from men and women alike, had made him a symbol of genderless beauty. But fame can be a cage, and even beauty can start to feel like a prison when it no longer represents who you are. So Xingye made a choice that stunned everyone. He cut it all off. The hair that had once been his trademark, his calling card, his legend, it was gone. In its place, a sharp, clean cut. Sometimes buzzed short, sometimes styled simply. He even grew a beard, something nobody expected from the boy who once looked like he'd stepped out of a dream. And as if to drive the transformation further, he committed himself to fitness. Months of discipline, training, sweat, and determination turned his frame into something entirely new. Broad shoulders, lean muscle, a body carved with the kind of strength you can't fake. Six-pack abs, a posture of confidence, a presence that demanded respect. The media called it a stunning transformation. Overnight, the headlines shifted from androgynous beauty to masculine rebirth. Some fans were shocked. Some mourned the loss of the long-haired prince they had fallen in love with. Others cheered, celebrating his ability to evolve, to step into a new identity. But for Xingye, it wasn't about pleasing one side or the other. It wasn't about applause at all. It was about freedom. He wasn't cutting away his past. He was claiming his future. By shedding the hair, he was saying, "I am more than your image of me. I am not here to fit your fantasy. I am here to be myself." And through it all, one man stood beside him, Han Zhen. Where the public saw change, Han Zhen saw courage. Where critics debated before and after, Han Zhen focused on the man in front of him. He encouraged Xingye through the grueling workouts, cheered him on when the transition felt overwhelming, and reminded him that identity isn't about hair length or muscles, it's about honesty. Together, they navigated the storm, proving once again that their relationship wasn't built on appearances. It was built on love, trust, and the freedom to grow. This transformation carried a powerful message. Too often, people are told to choose, to either stay frozen in the image the world first accepted, or to hide their true selves altogether. Xingye did neither. He embraced change publicly, and in doing so, he sent a clear signal. You don't owe anyone the version of yourself they fell in love with yesterday. You have the right to evolve. You have the right to become more. And in the end, that's what made this chapter so remarkable. The long hair had been a symbol of beauty. Cutting it became a symbol of freedom. and building his new body became a symbol of resilience. One man redefining himself, supported by a partner who loved him in every form. As one headline put it, from long-haired prince to modern gentleman, Xingye proves that true beauty is not about appearance, but about the courage to live authentically. And maybe that's the truth we should all remember. Beauty fades, trends change, but authenticity, the kind of authenticity that shines through every transformation, lasts forever. The story of love now becomes the story of rebirth. From confession to transformation, from long hair to short, from mystery to strength, Xingye's journey is one of constant evolution. And through every stage, Han Zhen is there, reminding us that the greatest love stories are not about staying the same, but about growing together. To everyone watching, let this chapter be a reminder. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to cut the hair, rewrite the script, and surprise the world. Because in the end, what matters is not whether people approve, it's whether you are free. From the long-haired prince who once seemed like he had stepped out of a painting, to the refined gentleman of strength and sophistication he later became, Xingye's journey is more than a change in style. It is the story of a man who refused to stay confined to an image, who embraced transformation with courage, and who found love that walked with him through every chapter. In the end, his evolution reminds us of something timeless. Beauty is fleeting, but authenticity endures. And when love is real, whether wrapped in the mystery of flowing hair or in the elegance of a tailored suit, it does not fade. It only deepens, becoming stronger, more inspiring, and infinitely more true. Love, in and of itself, can be beautiful. But when love learns to go hand in hand with real life, with work, with ambition, with the thousands of small pressures of adulthood, that's when it becomes greater. For Xingye and Han Zhen, their relationship was more than just flirting in photos or whispering romantic words in the papers. It became a partnership, one that connected their personal lives and professional dreams, connecting their hearts, not just with emotions, but with purpose. After their relationship became public, many expected them to hide, to keep their love private, away from the judgment of others. Instead, they leaned into it. They chose to build something together. The two launched a handmade cake brand, pouring their creativity into the recipes, the presentation, and the stories behind each product. To fans, it may seem like just another business, but to them, it's proof that their love can create not just moments, but a livelihood. Together, they've built a project that's both tender and practical, a daily reminder that intimacy and hard work can grow together. Beyond work, they support each other's image and personal growth. Xingye, once defined by long hair and then a bold transformation, has found a solid support in Han Zhen. Han Zhen's aesthetic eye and natural charisma have helped Xingye step into a new image, that of a confident, elegant gentleman. In return, Xingye's openness and honesty have encouraged Han Zhen to express himself more. Not just as a model or a businessman, but as a partner willing to accept vulnerability in public. The balance between them is unmistakable. When Xingye walked into the room, people noticed his elegance, the quiet strength of a man who faced the world and chose to be himself. When Han Zhen came to him, people saw harmony, the solidity of two lives that did not compete but complemented each other. When they were together, they were not only beautiful in appearance but also very convincing. They made love sustainable, trustworthy, and real. Fans often compare their story to a romantic movie, and that is completely reasonable. The scenes seemed written for the screen. The two of them traveling together, laughing at the dinner table, adjusting each other's clothes before going on stage. Everyday details suddenly became cinematic moments because of the way they looked at each other. Because a small gesture of care was worth more than 1,000 rehearsed lines. As one fan wrote, Just seeing them together is a picture. But knowing that they truly love each other, that's perfection. Their story resonates because it isn't frozen in fantasy. It's rooted in everyday life. They've proven that same-sex love doesn't have to exist only in the shadows or in dreams. It can exist openly in boardrooms, in bakeries, on social media, and in the quiet routines of everyday life. They don't stop being partners when the cameras are off. They're partners in every decision, every project, every shared challenge. This is what makes their relationship different. It's not about pursuing perfection, it's about building it together, bit by bit. Where others might choose secrecy or distance, they choose collaboration. Where others might fear judgment, they choose openness. And while others may accept love as a fleeting emotion, they choose love as a foundation, strong enough to carry both forward. Many who have followed their journey, and this is the lesson that remains. Love can be tender, but it must also be true. Love can be inspiring, but it must also be lasting. Love can be wonderful, but it is most powerful when expressed through simple acts of closeness, encouragement, and shared dreams. In the story of Xingye and Han Zhen, we see both sides, the romantic love of the movies and the strong relationship of real life. And perhaps that is why their relationship continues to inspire, because it shows us that true love is not about choosing between the two. It is about blending them, weaving passion with purpose, and creating a life that is both beautiful and lasting. Every young person watching, for every member of the LGBTQ+ community, wondering if their love can overcome the veil, their story is the answer. Yes, it can. Love can be both public and private. It can be both glamorous and real. It can be both a dream and an everyday reality. And in the quiet rhythm of our days together, we are reminded, the greatest love stories are not measured by external perfection, but by the strength within. Every love story has its chapters. Some begin with surprise, some with hesitation, some with a sudden spark that catches fire before anyone has time to name it. But the love story of Xingye and Han Zhen is not remembered for how it began. It is remembered for how it grew, because growth is the quiet secret of every lasting love. What the world has witnessed in them is not just romance, not just photographs or headlines. What we've seen is the unfolding of two people into their truest selves, side by side. Their bond was never about creating a spectacle. It was about creating a life. And in that life, something remarkable emerged. A balance of strength and tenderness, of individuality and unity, of freedom and belonging. In Xingye, fans once saw an image, an androgynous beauty who blurred every boundary. But over time, they learned to see the man. Not because he shed what came before, but because he grew into something fuller, deeper. He showed that a person does not need to choose between mystery and strength, softness and power. He can hold them all and still stand tall. In Han Zhen, people once saw charisma and style. But what has endured is not only his presence, it is his constancy. The quiet way he steadied their path together, the simple assurance of being the one who stayed. His role was never about eclipsing Xingye, nor about shining brighter. It was about harmony, the art of walking in step with another soul. Together, they created a love that feels both intimate and expansive. Private in its essence, yet public in its meaning. Their partnership was never about proving anything to outsiders. And yet, by simply being real, they proved everything. They reminded the world that love does not ask for permission. It does not check boxes or stop at borders or bend to the narrow frame of convention. It simply lives, stronger than expectation, freer than prejudice. That is the deeper resonance of their journey. It speaks not only to those who watched with admiration, but to anyone who has ever wondered if they are allowed to love openly. Their story answers with a resounding yes. Yes, you are allowed. Yes, your feelings matter. Yes, your truth deserves to stand in the light. And it whispers something else too, that the essence of love is not perfection. It is presence. It is the courage to stand beside each other through every change, every evolution, every new season of life. Hairstyles will change, faces will age, bodies will transform, but sincerity, true, unguarded sincerity remains. And in that, love finds its permanence. For the LGBTQ+ community, the meaning is clear. Their story is not just two men falling in love. It is a statement, lived day by day, that same-sex love is as worthy, as profound, as sacred as any other. It is not an argument. It is evidence. The evidence of joy in a laugh, of trust in a touch, of devotion in a glance. The kind of evidence that does not need defending because it already exists. And for everyone, regardless of identity, their journey offers the same invitation: to live honestly, to dare to love without disguise, to remember that freedom is not given, it is claimed. So perhaps the truest message left by Xingye and Hanzhen is this: be yourself without apology, love without hesitation, grow without fear, because in the end, authenticity is the only beauty that does not fade. As we close, picture this: the long-haired dreamer of years past, a figure who seemed too ethereal to belong to this world. Standing now as a man of quiet confidence, elegant and strong. And beside him, Hanzhen, the partner, the anchor, the constant. Two images that at first feel like contrasts, yet together form a single story. Two halves of a whole. A journey completed not in isolation, but in love. Their love may not be perfect, but it is real. Appearance may change, but love and sincerity never change. Now we turn to you. Did their story move you as much as it moved us? And what inspiration do you find in the love of Xingye and Hanzhen? Tell us your thoughts, because love stories like this are not just theirs. They belong to all of us who believe in love without boundaries. From the graceful beauty with flowing hair that captivated millions, to the confident, stalwart man standing beside the one he loves, Xingye's journey is proof that true beauty lies not in appearances, but in a sincere and courageous life. His love for Hanzhen reminds us that love in any form is powerful enough to change lives and courageous enough to change the world. Thank you so much for joining us in celebrating this remarkable story. If their journey has touched you, please subscribe, ring the bell, and share this video so that more voices are lifted up by the message of love and freedom. Until we meet again, hold fast to your truth and never stop believing in the love that makes you whole. What could make a forbidden love story the most unforgettable in Hong Kong history? He was a dazzling superstar, idolized across Asia, with fame, fortune, and beauty others could only dream of. But behind the bright lights, Leslie Cheung harbored a secret. A love so deep it defied society, and so fragile it was pushed into the shadows. This was no ordinary romance, but a relationship that exploded on stage, challenged deeply ingrained stereotypes, and ended in heartbreaking tragedy. Beneath the dazzling stage lights of the 1980s, Hong Kong was the cradle of Asia's brightest stars. And among countless voices, among the endless wave of new faces, one name burst forth with an impact so powerful it left an indelible mark: Leslie Cheung. He was not only a singer and an actor, but a cultural icon, a figure whose every step captivated the public. With his sharp features, eyes that carried both intensity and melancholy, and a voice that could melt thousands of hearts, Leslie became the embodiment of romance, talent, and charisma. In 1984, the song Monica exploded onto the scene and instantly became a phenomenon. It wasn't just a song, it was the turning point that propelled his name beyond Hong Kong, resonating across Asia. During those concerts, tens of thousands of fans screamed his name. The glow of countless light sticks filled the arenas like a galaxy of stars. And at the very center of it all stood Leslie Cheung, an artist basking in the most glorious moments of his career. Monica was more than a lively pop track. It symbolized youth, ambition, and freedom, values that Leslie himself would chase throughout his life. But behind the roaring applause, behind the giant posters plastered across the city, and behind the ever-present smile he wore for the public, there was a deep emptiness in Leslie's heart. That emptiness did not come from a lack of fame or fortune. He had both in abundance. It came from love. A love that everyone should have the right to live openly, but for him, at that time, it was impossible to reveal. In Hong Kong during the 1980s and 1990s, society was still burdened by heavy prejudice against the LGBTQ+ community. In the entertainment world, where the image of a star was tied to ideals of perfection and conventional male-female romance, to admit same-sex love was almost unthinkable. For many, it could mean the end of a career. And no one understood this more than Leslie Cheung himself. He knew that one honest confession, one unguarded gaze, could make the world turn its back on him. Yet the heart cannot be commanded, and love does not wait for the right time or the right place. At the very height of his fame, when the press praised him and millions of fans adored him, Leslie Cheung carried a secret. That secret was the profound love he held for another man, a man who would later be known to the world as his lifelong partner for over 20 years, Daffy Tong. Behind the curtains, when the lights dimmed and the music stopped, when the crowds went home, Leslie returned to his private room, where loneliness lingered like a shadow. And in those quiet moments, there was only one person who stayed by his side, who listened and shared his burdens, who filled the void in his heart. Behind the glittering spotlight, there was another Leslie Cheung, a man who yearned for love, who longed to live authentically. Every time he stood on stage, he lit up the world. But when he returned to solitude, a question haunted him. Can I be both an artist and a man who loves sincerely without having to sacrifice one for the other? That was the greatest conflict of his life. On one side stood a magnificent career, where he was idolized as the flawless star. On the other stood a pure, simple love, but one fraught with risks if it was ever revealed. And at this crossroads, Leslie Cheung made a choice that would move millions to tears in the years that followed. He chose love. From the peak of his career onward, Leslie's story was no longer just about conquering music and cinema. It became a ballad of love, a love tested by prejudice, hidden beneath fame, but ultimately immortalized as legend. Perhaps that is the eternal allure of Leslie Cheung. He didn't just show the audience a star, he showed the world a human being. A heart that dared to love, dared to ache, and dared to live fully. Under the dazzling lights, what made him choose love over career? And before we dive deeper into this unforgettable love story, let me ask you, the viewer watching this video, where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and let me know. The early 1980s in Hong Kong were a time of both turbulence and opportunity. The city was alive with neon lights, bustling streets, and an entertainment industry hungry for fresh talent. Leslie Cheung, already beginning to make his mark as a singer, found himself at a crossroads. He was ambitious, eager to expand beyond music, and ready to prove that his artistry could transcend the stage. It was during this pivotal moment in his life that destiny quietly introduced him to someone who would change everything: Daffy Tong. Their first meeting was not wrapped in fireworks or the glamour of the spotlight. It was quiet, almost ordinary to an outsider, but to Leslie, it was unforgettable. Daffy was not the type to chase fame or revel in attention. He was reserved, intelligent, and carried with him a calm steadiness, the kind of presence Leslie had longed for in the whirlwind of celebrity life. From that first encounter, a connection began to form, subtle but powerful, like a spark that refuses to fade. As Leslie began his transition into acting, their relationship grew alongside his career. In 1982, he starred in Nomad, a film that challenged conventions with its daring themes of youth, rebellion, and existential searching. Leslie's performance was raw and magnetic, showing audiences that he was more than just a singer with a charming smile. He was an actor capable of depth and complexity. Behind the scenes, though, away from the critical acclaim and rising stardom, was a young man slowly falling in love, learning what it meant to have someone who saw him not as a star, but as a person. By the mid-1980s, Leslie's fame was spreading. Crowds filled theaters, magazines printed his face on every cover, and directors were beginning to recognize his unique ability to blend vulnerability with strength. In 1987, he appeared in A Better Tomorrow 2, part of John Woo's iconic crime series. This film solidified his reputation as one of the most versatile actors of his generation. On screen, he was intense, charismatic, and unforgettable. Off-screen, however, he was cherishing something far more intimate: stolen moments of peace with Daffy Tong. For Daffy, life with Leslie meant living in the shadows. He gave up his promising career in finance to quietly become Leslie's anchor, the one constant in a world where everything else seemed temporary. In public, they could not openly display affection. They had to be careful, cautious, almost invisible as a couple. But in private, their bond deepened with each passing year. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about the quiet comfort of companionship, about having someone to share late-night conversations, unspoken worries, and small joys that no one else could see. The irony was striking. While Leslie's life on screen was filled with action, intensity, and recognition, his real love story was taking place in silence. It was a relationship that had to be hidden from the world, yet it gave him the strength to keep performing, to keep pushing himself as an artist. Daffy became his refuge, the person who grounded him when the noise of fame became too loud, the person who reminded him that behind the applause and flashing cameras, he was still just a man in need of love and belonging. It was during these early years together that the foundation of their relationship was built: trust, sacrifice, and an unspoken promise to stand by each other no matter what storms came their way. The world saw Leslie rising as a superstar, the singer of Monica, the actor of Nomad, and A Better Tomorrow 2. But Daffy saw the vulnerable soul behind the fame, the one who laughed freely in private and worried endlessly about the cost of his choices. Every love story has its beginning, and for Leslie and Daffy, the 1980s were that sacred beginning. It was not the kind of romance celebrated with headlines or applauded by society, but it was real, fragile, and quietly unbreakable. What they shared during those years would become the thread woven through every triumph and every tragedy to come. And so, as Leslie's star rose higher in the film sky, his relationship with Daffy grew deeper, invisible to the crowd, but shining brightly in the silence between songs, between films, amid the chaos of fame. It was a love that was cultivated in silence, but destined to walk alongside every triumph and sorrow. Soon, as Leslie's artistic talent rose to new heights, that secret love would blend with music and film, shaping not only the man, but the legend he would become. By the late 1980s, Leslie Cheung had become a force to be reckoned with. His career was flourishing, his artistic talent was growing, and his influence extended far beyond Hong Kong. In the eyes of the public, he was untouchable, a shining star whose every move was celebrated, whose voice and charisma could lift a generation. But behind the flashy exterior, a quieter, softer story was slowly being revealed, a story that few people knew at the time. Daffy Tong, the man who quietly entered Leslie's life, made a choice more dramatic than any confession. He gave up his promising career in finance to steadfastly support the man he loved. It was not an easy decision. Giving up a stable career, a stable life, and the comfort of anonymity to take on the uncertain, often hidden role of being someone's rock in the shadows required courage and dedication of the highest order. But Daffy did it without hesitation. He knew Leslie needed more than praise. He needed someone who could help him stay grounded as the tide of fame rose. This sacrifice was not reported in the tabloids or written about in the headlines. It was invisible, almost unspoken, but it was all there. Because while the world watched Leslie conquer the screen and the stage, what kept him grounded, what allowed him to shine so brightly, was the love that waited for him off stage. In 1987, Leslie starred in Rouge, a hauntingly beautiful film about love, loss, and longing. His performance was mesmerizing, full of nuance and emotion almost too real, as if he was painting something very personal. Audiences were captivated, critics praised him, and his reputation as one of Hong Kong's finest actors was cemented. Behind the camera, however, Daffy was there. The quiet supporter, never asking for recognition, who just wanted Leslie to keep reaching higher, knowing that he would always be there to catch him if he fell. The following year, in 1988, Leslie released Silence is Golden. Its bittersweet melody and poignant lyrics touched the hearts of countless listeners, becoming a hymn to quiet strength and dignity. Many people understood the song in their own way, but for those who knew his story, it reflected his life. A love that flourished in silence, a devotion that did not need the spotlight, but gave Leslie the courage to face the world. What made their love extraordinary was not flashiness or drama, it was persistence. While Leslie dazzled on stage with elaborate costumes and emotional performances, Daffy took care of the little things: schedules, routines, the details that no one cared about but made all the difference. Love in their world was more than passion. It was partnership. It was about ensuring that, in the midst of the storm of fame, Leslie never felt alone. And this is where the beauty of their story comes from. Art and love were not two separate paths in Leslie's life. They went hand in hand, side by side, shaping each other. His greatest works of the late 80s and early 90s carried an emotional weight that could only come from a man who truly understood love, who truly understood what it meant to be loved and cherished. Meanwhile, Daffy's devotion gave Leslie the freedom to push boundaries, to act fearlessly, to sing from the heart, because he knew that no matter how loud the outside world, there was always peace waiting at home. Their relationship seemed invisible to most, but its imprint was everywhere. In every heartbreaking ballad, in every emotional performance, there is Daffy's mark. Invisible, nameless, yet so profound. It is proof that sometimes the most powerful loves are not the ones that are broadcast to the world, but the ones that live quietly, faithfully, day after day. Looking back, we can see how important this relationship was. Without Daffy's sacrifice, without his unwavering support, would Leslie have reached the heights he did? Probably not. Every legend needs a foundation, and for Leslie, that foundation was love. A love that asks nothing in return, but gives everything it has. For the LGBTQ+ community and for anyone who has ever loved in silence, their story holds a profound lesson. True love is not about flashy gestures or public recognition. It's about understanding, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment. It's about walking through fire together, even when the world refuses to see or accept you. Leslie and Daffy show us that two men can build a relationship as strong, tender, and lasting as any love story in history. Their love reminds us that behind every great artist, behind every shining star, there may be someone who quietly lifts them up. Someone who chooses devotion over self-interest, someone who sacrifices so the other can soar. And that's not weakness, it's strength in its purest form. If this story has touched your heart, please cherish it. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories of courage, art, and the power of love, support this channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing. Together, let's keep these voices alive and these legacies remembered. By the early 1990s, Leslie Cheung had established himself as a superstar in Asia. His concerts were selling out, his albums topped the charts, and his screen performances showed an artist unafraid to take risks. But 1993 marked the year that catapulted him into the international spotlight, not just as a Hong Kong icon, but as one of the most revered actors in world cinema. That year, Leslie Cheung took on the role of Cheng Dieyi in Farewell My Concubine, directed by Chen Kaige. It was a challenging role, the tragic tale of a Peking opera actor whose life becomes entangled with art, identity, and unrequited love. The character was both fragile and resilient, both strong and broken, and in Leslie Cheung's hands, it was unforgettable. When the film premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, audiences were awestruck. It was a performance so layered, yet so haunting, that it left critics speechless. Farewell My Concubine won the Palme d'Or, the top prize at Cannes, cementing Leslie Cheung's status not just as a star of Hong Kong cinema, but as an internationally recognized artist. For many, it was a revelation. Here was an Asian actor whose sensitivity, charisma, and emotional authenticity could rival any performance on the global screen. Yet behind that triumph, Leslie's heart bore another, more private truth, one that had been hidden for too long. The world admired his artistry, but they did not know the man who gave him strength. For more than a decade, Natalie Tong was his silent partner, the one who sacrificed his career, the one who stood in the shadows, the one who asked for nothing but gave everything. Their love was spent in silence, in whispers, in gazes. But by the mid-1990s, Leslie was no longer content to remain hidden. He had played tragic lovers, repressed men, and he understood better than anyone that art cannot heal if the truth remains unspoken. In 1997, at his legendary Countdown concert in Hong Kong, Leslie did something no one expected. Standing on stage in front of thousands of fans, his voice trembling not with fear but with confidence, he introduced Daffy Tong, not as a friend, not as a companion, but as my love, my partner. In that moment, the entire auditorium erupted. The applause was thunderous. The energy was explosive. It was more than a declaration of love. It was an act of defiance, a moment of truth that broke decades of silence. For an Asian superstar in the 1990s, such words were unprecedented. This was an era when same-sex relationships were rarely acknowledged, let alone celebrated, especially in the entertainment industry. In saying those words, Leslie put everything on the line: his career, his endorsements, his legacy. But he did it anyway, because for him, love was never something to hide. That night, Leslie also performed his emotional cover of The Moon Represents My Heart. The melody was gentle, the lyrics simple yet profound. You ask me how deep is my love? The moon is my heart. To many fans, it was just a beautiful ballad. But to those who understood, it was a love letter, a message delivered through music to the man sitting quietly in the crowd, the man Leslie had just introduced to the world. This was more than just a concert. It was a revolution in its own right. Leslie Cheung, at the height of his fame, had chosen to be true to himself. He was not only an icon of music and cinema, but also a symbol of courage for countless people who had been silenced, who had hidden their true selves, who had buried their love in fear. For the LGBTQ+ community across Asia, his words were a beacon, proof that even in a society bound by tradition and prejudice, it was possible to stand up and say, "This is me. This is the person I love." From that night on, Leslie and Daffy were no longer a whispered secret in Hong Kong's entertainment industry. They became living testaments to what it means to love openly, to risk everything, and to seek freedom in sincerity. Leslie's courage did not erase the prejudices of society, but it did break down the wall of silence, letting light shine on those who yearned to be themselves. What made that moment unforgettable was not only its boldness, but also its tenderness. Leslie did not express his love through scandal or defiance, but through tenderness. He simply called out the name of the person who mattered most to him, and in doing so, he brought hope to thousands of people who had been told that their love was wrong. Looking back, that night in 1997 is considered one of the most powerful acts of truth in the history of Asian entertainment. It was a moment when art and life intersected, when a man who had portrayed so many tragic love stories on screen finally found the love of his life. And that is why Leslie Cheung was more than just a star. He was a symbol of courage. His love for Daffy Street, once hidden, became the very thing that defined his legacy. Not a scandal, but a story of sincerity, dedication, and humanity. As the years passed and the curtain drew closer in the 1990s, Leslie Cheung's halo of fame no longer spoke for itself. To millions, he remained a shining star, but to those who truly knew him, the weight of invisible battles became harder to conceal. The laughter, the charm, the natural radiance on stage, all of these often masked a man who was quietly drowning in inner turmoil. Behind closed doors, Leslie struggled with the shadows that fame could not erase. Sleepless nights, creeping doubts, and the heavy hand of sadness that clung to him no matter how bright the lights. Those close to him began to sense the struggle. They witnessed moments when the smile did not reach his eyes, when the fatigue lingered long after the music had stopped. The pressure to be perfect, to live not just as an artist but as an icon, gnawed at him every day. While his voice continued to bring comfort to countless fans, there were nights when even the stage, his refuge for decades, could not dispel the pain. In 2002, he took on a role that seemed almost prophetic. Inner Senses is a psychological thriller about illusions, delusions, and the fragility of the human mind. Leslie plays a psychiatrist who struggles to lead others out of darkness, but is himself drawn into despair. His performance is captivating, but for those who know his inner struggles, it is frighteningly real. The film's themes of isolation and mental anguish are so close to his own, it's as if he is no longer just acting, but exposing fragments of his own truth to the screen. Many later described it as a strange premonition, art reflecting a pain that words could not express. Then, on April 1st, 2003, tragedy struck. The news spread throughout Hong Kong and beyond. Leslie Cheung had committed suicide. The shock was immediate, the grief overwhelming. Fans poured into the streets, their grief spilling over into tears and candlelit vigils. The neon lights, once symbols of a vibrant city, were now dimmed in a mist of mourning. The world asked the same impossible question. How could a man who had brought so much joy, who had embodied beauty and strength, live in such deep sorrow that he was forever silenced? At the center of this grief was Daffy Tong. The cameras at the funeral captured an image that still lingers today. Daffy clutching Leslie's portrait to his chest, his body shaking, his face etched with grief. It was more than a spouse grieving a loved one. It was the raw truth of a love that had endured decades of secrecy, sacrifice, and devotion. There were no words to measure such a loss, no words powerful enough to contain the grief. There was only silence, broken by sobs, and the image of a man holding on to the last tangible reminder of the other. It was a pain so pure, so selfless, that it seemed to echo throughout the city. For fans, it was a huge shock. They had idolized Leslie as a superstar, but in Daffy's tears, they saw the man behind the legend, a man who loved and was loved with a depth of love that most people can only dream of. The loss was no longer that of an icon, but of a man whose wounds had finally been laid bare. Condolences poured in from around the world. Flowers lined the sidewalks, letters piled up, and songs played over and over again, each note now heavier, filled with longing. Films like Rouge and Farewell My Concubine were revisited, no longer as works of art, but as rays of light that illuminated the soul of a man whose sensitivity had always been his greatest gift and his greatest burden. Yet amid the grief, one undeniable truth rose above the sadness. Leslie Cheung's love story with Daffy Tong did not end in death. The image of Daffy alone at the funeral, broken, defenseless, and all too human, spoke louder than any words. It was the end of a love story, written not in fame, but in loyalty, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion. Leslie's passing has left a scar that will never fully heal, but his legacy lives on, in his songs, in his films, and in the courage to live an authentic life. He reminds us that even the brightest stars can be fragile, and that sometimes the people who bring us the most light are fighting the darkest battles. And so we remember him. Not just as an idol who lit up the stage, not just as an actor who changed cinema, but as a man of infinite beauty and infinite pain. His story is not one of fame or tragedy, but of humanity at its rawest. Tonight, as we think of Leslie Cheung, let us embrace him with sadness, with love, and with gratitude. For he dared to live, he dared to love. And in the end, he showed us the most heartbreaking truth of all, that even legends bleed, and even legends can be broken. 2 decades have passed since that tragic day in 2003, but Leslie Cheung's memory has never faded. His music still resonates on radio and playlists, his films are still shown on the big and small screens, and his influence remains deeply ingrained in Hong Kong culture and beyond. But perhaps his most enduring legacy lies not just in the roles he played or the songs he sang, but in the love story he lived. A love that continues to inspire, comfort, and remind us of the strength it takes to be true to ourselves. 20 years after Leslie's death, Daffy Tang remains steadfast. He has never sought a replacement, never let his heart stray. While the world moves on, Daffy chooses to live quietly, cherishing the memories of a bond that shaped his life. His loyalty was not born of duty, but of devotion. A devotion that time and distance do not diminish. In a world where relationships often falter under the pressures of modern life, Daffy's fidelity was a rare and powerful testament that true love does not always end in death, that it can live on in memory, in action, in silence. Fans often remember Leslie through his songs, and some of his tunes have taken on deeper meaning since his passing. Songs like Chase, 1995, and Love of the Past, 1993, are no longer just ballads of longing and nostalgia. They are now hymns of remembrance. To listen to them is to hear Leslie's voice echoing through time, as if still singing to Daffy, still singing to the millions who mourned him, still singing to anyone who has ever loved deeply enough to understand the pain of loss. Each lyric now sounds like a tribute, each note a whispered message from a man who gave his all, both in art and in love. It is rare for a love affair, especially one largely kept secret, to be remembered as one of the greatest love stories in a city as vibrant and chaotic as Hong Kong. And yet, people still call the love affair between Leslie Cheung and Natalie Tong the most beautiful love story Hong Kong has ever known. Not because it was perfect, not because it was without its struggles, but because it was true. It was tender in private and brave in public. It overcame the weight of secrecy, the glamour of fame, and even the brutality of tragedy. And in the end, it triumphed. Despite being written in a time and place where prejudice was rampant, it has touched the hearts of everyone who has ever longed to live authentically, to love without shame, to stand side by side with another human being against the tide of the world. For the LGBTQ+ community, especially in Asia, Leslie's life and love have become a beacon. At a time when being gay was still taboo, He dared to step forward, speak his truth, and publicly announce his partner to thousands of people. That single act opened doors that had long been closed, giving others the courage to believe that their love was valid and worthy of respect. The lesson here is not just about fame or glory, but about the power of vulnerability. Leslie showed us that being true to ourselves is not weakness, but the deepest form of strength. And Daffy showed us that loving someone with unwavering loyalty, even in silence and grief, is one of the deepest expressions of humanity. Together, they prove that love does not need to fit into society's narrow definitions to be extraordinary. Love, in its truest form, is extraordinary. For today's young people, for anyone living in a world that often demands conformity, Leslie and Daffy's story is a reminder that authenticity matters. That loving courageously, living authentically, is not just about honoring yourself, but about honoring your very nature. Their story whispers to us through time, don't be afraid. Love is worth it. Even if the world doesn't understand, love anyway. And so Leslie Cheung's legacy is not just his iconic films or his timeless music. His legacy is this love, a love that has proven itself stronger than secrets, stronger than prejudice, even stronger than death. A love that continues to inspire, move, and teach. There are love stories that fade with the years, and there are love stories that become legends. But then there are love stories like Leslie and Daffy's, stories that need no embellishment, no exaggeration, because their truth alone is enough to endure. Their love was etched into time itself, a bond that never fades, a devotion that never dies. And perhaps that is why, even now, people continue to honor them. Because deep down, we all recognize what they had, a rare, solid, soul-deep connection that reminds us of what love can be at its best. There are loves that don't need time to prove themselves, because they are already eternal. If this story has touched your heart, let it be more than just a memory. Take it with you, share it with others, and let it inspire you to live and love truly. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered and celebrated, please support this channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing. Together, let's preserve not only the music and movies, but also the love, the eternal love of Leslie Cheung and Daffy Tang. Leslie Cheung and Daffy Tang have proven that love, when true, is unbreakable. It defies fear, prejudice, and even time. Their story is not only a reminder of the past, but also a beacon for the future. To live authentically, to love fiercely, to never hide who you are. Let their story inspire you to always cherish love. If their legacy touches your heart, subscribe and share. Because love like theirs